Good morning, good afternoon from wherever you are. It's good morning here in the UK and it's raining. But this is the Boss It podcast. The Boss It podcast is really for software entrepreneurs. So what I'm attempting to do is to reach out to people and cover topics that I think will be of interest if you're running a software business, or even if you're aiming to run a software business. And maybe it's something that you've been doing for many, many years. I know a lot of my contacts, because I've been in this sector for a long time, they may have been running a software business for sort of 20, sometimes 30 years, but the world changes. So what I attempt to do is I speak to other software entrepreneurs, or I speak to people that I think have something to say or something of interest for when running your business. And today I've got a first because I'm speaking to Sean C, or Shri, I believe, if I was being strict and it was the Chinese pronunciation, and he's going to correct me in a minute, I'm sure. Sean has got a marketing agency. He's based in the Philippines. I think he's said he's fourth generation Philippines, but has Chinese parents. And I don't know if I've spoken to Sean before. So this is going to be quite an interesting podcast, because usually the people that come on to Boss It are quite often, I've known them for many years, but this is a fresh conversation and we'll see how it goes. Good morning or good afternoon to you, Sean. How are you doing?
Good morning to you, Mark. It is afternoon here around 4 p.m. in the Philippines, and I'm honored to be on your show. It is exciting, a little bit pressuring since I'm the first Filipino, but
yeah, you've
yeah,
got
I'm
to do
happy to
well.
be
You've
here.
got to do well here for the Philippines.
Oh
But
man,
we've had a short chat already just before, just a little
yeah.
bit to get to know each other, or it's a couple of minutes, and you come across very engaging. So I'm sure it's going to go really well. Tell us about Sean. Who are you?
Oh, so my name's Sean. I'm from the Philippines. I'm born again Christian, and I run SEO Hacker, which is a 50-man digital marketing agency here in the country. We're one of the most trusted and the leading SEO company here in the Philippines. And I started when I was 21, 22 years old. That was a decade ago. I'm turning 33 now. And I started, believe it or not, with 1,300 pesos capital, and dollars, that's somewhere 60, 65 US. And I grew it to what it is now. I think we're now $1 million company. And it's really a lot of prayers, a lot of grit, a lot of mentorship from other great people, books, and podcasts like this one, listening to Boss It as well. Right after our recording, I'm going to check out some of your episodes, by the way. Yeah, that's it so far.
So what made you want to start your own business?
I failed 28 units in college. That's a death sentence for your career. So, but yeah, so I got into HP by some miraculous divine appointment. I don't know why they would hire a guy with 28 failing creds in college, but I worked there just 5 short months and had to resign because SEO Hacker was growing. It was unprecedented growth that I didn't expect as well. And it's just people who were reading the SEO Hacker blog, and they started sharing my stuff to their managers, to their bosses, or the CEO and founder themselves would get in touch with me and wanted to hire me. So I was making like somewhere 5 to 10 times my day job salary already,
Right.
without having to go to an office, without having to work 8 hours a day, and without having to spend commute and lunch and dinner money. So it just made sense. So I resigned, turned over well. HP is a fantastic company, and but I had to jump on this opportunity, or else I'd miss the train.
But what you may have failed when you were at college in your terms, but I mean, as we both know, sometimes the failures can be ultimately your greatest successes, because it can determine other things and it can give you a different perspective. But you get a job at HP. Why start a part-time job?
That's a very good question. And to add to what you said earlier, I couldn't help but add to that. And I totally agree. Failure is a part of success. There's a
Yeah.
saying that if don't ask how a sausage is made while you're eating one. And there's a lot of failure that goes into success. And so I'd say that those failures taught me a lot in how to succeed, how to get back up on my 2 feet. And why did I start this freelance thing? So I was supposed to take literature or writing because that's my passion. But my parents, being the Filipino Chinese parents that they are,
Yeah.
told me there's no money in writing, and there isn't in the Philippines. If you're a writer, you probably end up having a mediocre income to a very low income.
Right.
So they said just take IT or comp sci, which you could find a decent job here at least if you take that course. But being the guy who didn't, I wasn't really that great in math. I was great in writing, not great in math.
Okay.
Failed 28 units. I started a blog towards the end of my college life, and that blog was called God and You, where I would write about my faith,
Yeah.
my belief in God, my journey as a single Christian guy. And what happened was not a lot of people were reading my stuff. The worst part is I know who the 3 readers are every month. That's my mother, my brother, and my sister. And that motivated me, that pumped me up. Hey, I gotta do something about this. So like any guy who's
It wasn't really a blog. It was a letter home, really, wasn't it? I mean,
it was my diary.
yeah,
They were
exactly.
taking a peek at it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, so that like any self-respecting gentleman who was an IT student, I went and asked Google, hey, how do you increase my readers? How do you increase my subscribers? And Google kept regurgitating me this answer: SEO, SEO, search engine optimization. I was like, what is this stuff? And it was exactly that time when I had to do my on-the-job training.
Right.
So I passed my application to a specific company doing digital marketing. Unfortunately, they were kind of a fly-by-night company, and they ended like a year in the business. They
Mm.
boomed, and then they suddenly were gone.
Mm.
But I was able to finish my OJT with them, and I said I want to be a social media marketer. But they said no. Well, we have openings for SEO, and I was like, okay, I'll take it. And what they were doing, the SEO, there's a lot of ways to do SEO, Mark. There's the
Mm.
black hat or unethical way. There's the white hat or purely ethical way. And then there's the gray hat in between.
Right.
This company was doing it black.
Okay.
so,
So
so
tell me what does that mean? If you're wearing the black hat SEO, what is it you're doing?
it's so,
I want to hear all the tricks and
uh,
the dirty secrets. All right.
yeah,
It's only you and I talking. It doesn't matter. Let's just have a chat about it.
it's a bit painful for me to talk about it since I did it. That was like over 10 years ago, as I
That's in
mentioned.
your history. Don't worry about it. We won't hold it against you. And anyway, it's just you and I talking.
Yeah. So Black Hat SEO, some of the practices that I personally had to do during my OJT is to leave blog comments like, thank you, this is such a great article, so vague, so general. Make sure the link was there pointing back to the client's website. Leave forum posts, create forum profiles, create Web 2.0 accounts like I don't even know if you guys still remember MySpace, Friendster, and
Yeah.
add people there, 50 people every day or something like that, and leave links and chat with them and stuff. So it's more, I would say it's more of being a web spammer, right? So
Right.
it's not something that I would encourage. It's not something we do. We actually frown upon it today. And SEO Hacker, we're right now I could argue we're the only white hat SEO company here in the country. And that is why we also became the number one, because it's sustainable. Google is happy with you. They're never going to penalize you or your clients, which is great. So a lot of big name companies come to us for SEO because
Is
of that.
that the reason that you want to have a business that is seen as having the white hat? Is that also related to your faith? Because you mentioned about being a born again Christian. Is
Ah,
that one of the things that it sort of sits more comfortably with you? Has that been behind that?
the simple answer is yes, Mark, because as you know, as a founder, the culture stems from your DNA. And
Sure.
one of the things that is most important to me is honor and integrity.
Mm.
Honor is very big in the Chinese family as well and
Mm.
culture, and so that's very big for me. My dad has always exemplified that And integrity is very important for me. Being a
Mm.
one-man person, whether on stage, in business, at the office, or at home, that's super important for me. So yeah, I'd say that sits very well with being a white hat SEO company.
So you mentioned about honor and integrity. I believe that that can create conflict in somebody if they live in a certain way for their private personal life, and then in business they're changing the rules. That to me doesn't make a lot of sense.
Yeah, it's tough, and that one is always going to be a challenge for a lot of business owners. So, Philippines is not really the straightest country. I'd say we're one of the actually it's globally known that we rank second for one of the most corrupt countries here in Southeast Asia.
Right,
Not proud of that, not happy about that, but it makes it for a very tough place to do business in.
right,
Um, Tough if you're a straight guy, you want to do things right, you're running it with integrity, but not so tough if you want to play gray,
sure.
bend the rules. So it was difficult for me to swallow that. In fact, my dad wanted me to climb the corporate ladder because he said, if you're gonna do business here, there's no way you can do it right. Because my dad ran a hardware store, which he closed down
Right,
just last year.
yeah,
So it's tough, and I would say if you're the guy who would split yourself into being someone else at home or in your private life and different person when you're doing business, that's very difficult thing to do. And
mm,
integrity comes from the root word integer, which means one or whole. And if
yes,
you split yourself to be two different persons, then literally you're a guy with no integrity because it's either a whole or
yes,
nothing.
sure,
So that's gonna be my take on that. It was tough for me, but it was also easy at the same time because I have the integrity as a core principle, and I cannot negotiate with that. I cannot compromise that.
mm,
So we're a company who pays our taxes right, who does things 100% straight, and it's very painful because taxes here are stupid crazy.
mm,
But we got to do what we got to do.
yeah, yeah. You also mentioned about your podcast called the Leadership Stack. Interesting
Yes.
name.
Oh,
Um,
thank you.
what does the Leadership Stack mean?
Here's the secret to that. Leadershipstack.com is available in GoDaddy.
Hang on a minute. I'm just going to get it.
No, it
$10.
was before I bought it. So
Oh, I
that's
see. Okay.
yeah,
It's not
yeah.
still available.
It's
I thought
not available anymore.
that's strange for you to
Yeah.
advertise that fact.
Yes.
Okay.
So I was shopping around for what name was available with a .com in it, So
Oh, come on,
and
Sean. I
since
was expecting some sort of meaningful answer to this, not just it was available on GoDaddy.
what there is an explanation to it, but the the primary thing was getting that name. That was so important to me because I'm going to build everything on it, and I didn't want to buy the domain name SEO Hacker. SEO Hacker. The domain name is seo-hacker.com
Right.
because the one without the dash would set me back like I bought it. It set me back like 8,000 US. So
Yeah.
I just bought it this year after doing business for 10 years because I couldn't
Right.
afford it in the first 9
Yes.
years.
Yes.
So I didn't want that to happen to me with this podcast, especially because it's a work of love. We're not making
Yeah.
money. We don't have plans to make money. If there's a sponsor that's going to come along, great. If not, great. So I thought about since I'm in the tech industry, being an SEO company, a digital marketing company, when you say stack or a full stack developer, that means that you can code from database to HTML to CSS. So from database to interface, that's really what it means. And so I said, why don't I try that? Leadership stack, meaning all the aspects of leadership, both the art and the science behind it. And it came out available in GoDaddy, so I went with it.
That's a strategy that could have gone badly wrong just by searching what's available and then just going for it. You could have had anything,
It
couldn't you?
could. It could. So
We probably wouldn't be having
yeah,
the conversation now,
yeah, yeah.
if it's something that looked like my Wi-Fi code or something.
Yeah, it could. It could. So there's a strategy that I use for names actually, which is pretty that's has served me pretty well because some clients, you believe it or not, they don't have websites and they would ask me, hey, what do you think should be my domain name? So how
Okay.
I strategize around it is I I use the tissue paper methodology where you would just write whatever name that comes in your mind and just slap them on disposable tissue papers, and
Yeah.
they're burnable, throwable ideas, but if one sticks, if the domain name is available, go
Yes.
get it.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
I'm a great believer in that, in trying to sort of dig into your subconscious.
yeah,
Sometimes when you're trying to come up with, a creative idea, sort of get the elements out in front of you, but then you've got to step into a different mode. There's the logical sort of processing, but when you
yeah,
want that creative idea, that's something that can often be thrown forward from your subconscious, and that
yeah.
can be just writing down ideas quickly. And
Yes,
sometimes great ideas come through, and you wonder
that's
where it
true.
comes from, and it's quite
Yeah,
exciting when that happens. That's good to hear. So
yeah,
tell
yeah.
tell me about tell me about the podcast then. So you're covering entrepreneurship, you're covering management, about what it is to be a leader,
Yeah.
all of those
Uh,
things.
so we started the podcast really to help entrepreneurs. I started the podcast before the pandemic. This was July 2019.
Right.
And so I'm not one of the podcasters who started because of the pandemic. We started before the pandemic, and our vision was to help people who are trying to scale their business from zero to being a startup, from being a startup to trying to grow it to survive. And then after the 5 year mark of finally graduating the startup uh, um, uh, part of the business or lifespan of the business to scaling it up all the way to enterprise. And right now, SEO Hacker, we're at the I hope the tail end of that scaling up process, because this year is going to be the year where we hire our first executive
Mm,
to come the join the Exicom. So the best time to talk and teach about that journey is when you are actually in that journey and you're being successful at it. And that's the reason why we started the podcast.
mm. I think, I mean, I speak to people in the software sector that are at all the different stages. I think there's probably a lot of them that are at the mid-size. We've got some that are now looking to make that big step. They want to become the unicorns, or maybe they're already there. And occasionally we get some people who are just sort of starting as well, that may be listening to the podcast. So talk to us a little bit about what changes do you have to make? Is there literally a controlled change as you move in through those different stages, where you have to say, well, that worked for us to get us to this stage, but it's not going to be what's going to get us beyond and to the next stage? Or is it just more of doing the same?
For sure. And I'm sure, Mark, you're one of the experts as well in this area. And this is why a lot of mom and pop startups remain mom and pop startups for a very long time, because change is difficult.
Yeah.
It will take you outside of your comfort zone, and change also requires money. You know, growth requires money. You have to capitalize it on that growth again.
Mm,
There are huge points of minor and major changes that you would have to do from the founding to the first 5 years of your startup life, to graduating that first 5 years all the way to your 10th or 15th year, where you have to professionalize and scale up to an enterprise level. So and I did it all bootstrap. Up to today, I'm the CEO founder. I don't have investors. We've never funneled money from other people into SEO Hacker.
right.
So the bootstrapping phase, you pretty much have to do everything. You put in all of these hats to do. I kid you not, I was doing the janitorial stuff in our first office because no one was doing it, and I didn't have money to hire janitors and cleaning staff. So, but you have to quit all of these jobs that you're not really that great at and that you shouldn't be doing because you're paying yourself a higher salary as the CEO and founder, supposedly. You have to
Yes.
quit these jobs, and you can only do that by making more sales. If there's no more revenue coming in to grow your bottom line, you can't hire people so that you can quit that job. I couldn't have hired my accounting team. I couldn't have hired my legal team. I couldn't have hired my writers, my marketers, my strategists if I didn't have the money. So The only job that I haven't been able to quit yet fully today is the sales and marketing job. I'm still the main business developer. I'm still the face of SEO Hacker. I still do marketing,
Sure.
but I've quit every single one of the other jobs, including accounts management, which I recently turned over. And I got to hire people because the revenue was growing. Now, when you enter the scale up stage or the growth stage, you have to recapitalize because now we've moved out of our office, which used to be just in a big house somewhere here, where I live in Parañaque, to the second and third floor of a commercial building. And
Mm.
we had to have that renovated, have a 5-year lease, had to put in all of the wirings and the LAN cables and stuff. That costs a lot of money. But if we didn't do that, we wouldn't be able to attract better talent
Mm.
and hire upper management people to lead the team. So we had to push ourselves, kick ourselves in the butt and say we have to do this change, painful as it is, because we're making good money anyway. But the vision is to grow to 500 partners. And right now we're at 30 during that time. Right
Right.
now we're at 60. So we've grown twice since that time. And our vision is 500. So we're still way off. But as you scale up, now what you need to do is fix your processes. Because
Yes.
before you didn't have any. When you hire, it's just you and
Yes.
maybe one or two other team leaders. You sit down, you interview the person, and that's it. You make a decision right there and then. And at the very beginning, that was even suckier because if you needed some position filled, you'd hire the next Joe that comes on the office, and that's fine. But that's a really bad way to do it because if that next Joe burns the house down, then you got more problems and you have to do the work anyway. So in the scale up stage, that's when you realize, okay, I have to fix that process. So we elongated our hiring process to 6 steps. And per one step, we actually ask the applicant to go home. But we have hired some amazing, amazing people because of that hiring process that we got. So it's not just the hiring process that you build processes on, but all of the other processes that you have in the team. So if you have a marketing team, what do you do when you first hire someone? What do they need to know? How are they going
Mm.
to get promoted? What are the positions that they're going to gun for in their career with you? What's the salary range of those positions? You want to give them a good idea of what they're going to get, or at least a percentage of the promotion money that they're going to get whenever they get promoted. So you processize things so people can get a clearer vision of who they can be, what they can become in your company, because without that, you're still running it like a mom and pop shop.
Mm. There, there are companies that are quite sizable that I've seen over the years in the software sector that even though they've reached quite a reasonable size, they haven't necessarily got those processes documented and nailed down. They often sometimes think they have, and then you ask 2 or 3 people to explain the same process and you see 3 different versions and you wouldn't even recognize them from the same company. Um, I don't think it's putting everything into a process is something that people typically enjoy. Some people will. I think the entrepreneur doesn't. That
Yeah,
entrepreneurial wanting to create, wanting to move forward, to
yeah,
sit and document these processes. But I think
yeah,
it definitely helps you. It
yeah.
enables you to have a better process.
Yeah, so I didn't take on that role. I hired a process engineer
Okay,
specifically to, and
it's a good
I
one.
told her that here's going to be your KPI. Here's going to be what winning looks like in the job, and what winning
Mm,
looks like for you is if I ask you what process we have for this job description, you're just going to be throwing me a link, and it's all there, and it's
yeah,
updated at least last 3 months updated. If it's
sure.
not last 3 months updated, it's I'm not happy with that.
Yeah.
That's not what winning looks like. So I placed in all of these and I took the time to write all of the bullet points of what winning looks like. That's where a lot of entrepreneurs fail. They don't tell what winning looks like or what your KPIs are in a clear way to
Mm,
the person holding the process engineer role. And so they get a hodgepodge of different processes that are
yeah.
not updated at all. It's not usable. Then they would just throw in the towel and say, well, we tried it and the processes are old. We can't use them anyway because we're in the tech sector where things change fast. And
Mm,
maybe that's not the way to go. And that I think that's one of the potholes that gets a lot of tech companies, and it sinks a lot of the revenue that you make, because you have to throw more money in broken processes and people
Mm.
figuring things out and breaking things again just because you have broken processes in the way.
And that change of process that you've had within your own organization as you've wanted to grow, is that also reflected in the service that you provide to the different types of organizations? So you could be dealing with somebody who's just starting their entrepreneurial journey, but then the very next client may be somebody and they're turning over maybe 10 million or more. Does your service to them have a different process? Is there a different way about going about helping them with the SEO services? Is there a big difference between the startup and somebody who's perhaps more established and been around for years?
It is difficult to package SEO in that way because the goal is one simple thing, and that is to rank on the first page of Google.
Mm.
If I package it in a way where I tell the startup, oh, you're a startup, oh, you only have this much budget, I can only give you page 2 or 3. That doesn't make sense because people
Mm.
don't go to page 2 and page 3. So I cannot sell them that with integrity. Some people
Yes.
do that, believe it or not,
Yeah.
which is so funny. But for me, I can't sell that with integrity and with honor. So
But a larger
I tell
company
them,
could have more money to throw at their marketing,
yeah,
whereas the
yes,
smaller company, you're going to be working with a more limited budget.
that's right.
Surely there's a difference in approach that you would have to have,
Yeah,
because you
that
can't give them both. If somebody's saying to you, we'll give you 20,000, 30,000, whatever, and somebody else is saying, well, I could $500 maybe. There's a
yeah.
big difference.
Yeah. So right at the get-go, we have our rack prices in the website,
Yeah.
and we tell the potential client that this is the price that we have. Are you okay with this? Now, if they're a startup without a budget, and for them SEO is an afterthought, it's a nice to have, but
Mm.
not critical for their business to survive and grow, they're not going to want to engage with us. And that's fine for us, because if that's how you're going to think about us,
Sure.
even if you did have the money,
Yeah.
you're going to just shove it down our throats that we have to get results very fast, and that's not how we work. And we have big clients that we work with who are very relaxed, chill. We love working with them. They pay well. Of course we love working with them. Of course we're going to prioritize them, and we're not going to want to work with you. So not getting all the SMEs who don't have the budget is completely okay. Not all money is good money.
I mean, some of the feedback that I've had in talking to the senior people within software companies is that they feel that years ago, SEO seemed to be what it was all about, as regards marketing, and it didn't really deliver on the promise from their
Mhm,
perspective.
mhm.
And there seems to be less conversations happening now that I hear anyway. And maybe that's because it's just happening and it's going on in the background and it's just accepted. But I felt that there was a degree of cynicism about SEO. And maybe this is partly to do with what you were saying before, between the black hat and the white hat. What's your view of where is the SEO art now today? Has it really matured? Is it always progressing? And do you come across that cynicism when people are talking to people about SEO?
I think that at least here in the Philippines, we have had a lot less cynicism, and that is because SEO Hacker, I think that SEO Hacker had a lot to do with it, me and my team,
Yep.
because when you search for SEO Philippines, we rank really high for it. Often we're the first company. I mean, Google's just testing things out, so it fluctuates from time to time, sometimes by the minute, but often we're the first company that you'll see when you search for SEO Philippines or
I'm,
SEO company
I'm
Philippines.
pleased to hear that, because as a SEO company, if you were on page 37, it would be a great advert, would it? Yes.
That'd be without integrity.
Yeah, exactly. Yes, that's right.
Yeah. So I guess that a lot of companies that contact us and deal with us, they get educated by me, oftentimes personally, and they learn SEO in a way in the perspective of a white hat company or a white hat CEO, where we do things in an all ethical fashion. We have had clients who have been hit by Google, who have been penalized by Google because they hired the wrong SEO company here. They
Right.
hired either a black or a gray hat, and we had to clean that up, educate them, and tell them this is the way to go. And they've been with us ever since. And so I do believe that at least here in the Philippines, the cynicism is quite low because we work with some of the biggest companies and they know that SEO works for them because we
Mm,
provide results.
mm,
But I do agree with you when you say that there's a lot of cynicism in the software world. And a lot of software, they're from US, UK, not
mm.
definitely not from the Philippines. So these companies would hire companies that also outsource from the Philippines or India, and
Okay.
they usually don't hire SEO hacker because our rates are like US rates. And
Mm,
that's because when you do things white hat, a lot of manual work is involved.
sure.
Unlike when you do it gray or black hat, you just run some software and it does the magic for you and spams a lot of people. And you could get rankings fast, but you could get penalized fast as well.
Mm,
So there's the risk reward ratio with those two methodologies. With white hat, payoff is a longer time, rankings take a lot longer, but there's no risk of penalty. So I guess
more
that
solid
is why.
results in the end.
Yeah, you're playing the long game when you
Yeah.
do it white hat. Yeah.
And when you say the long game, what sort of time frames can that mean? Give us a range.
It would largely depend on the competition.
Yep.
So if you're doing it for a real estate company, for example, even here in the Philippines, it is very, very competitive now. If you're
Mm,
doing it for the secondhand car sales companies out there, it is also very difficult. But if you're going to do it, for example, one of my clients would be a chemical for flooring for manufacturers here, plants like
mm,
Nestle and Procter and Gamble. They're a very niche company, but one sale could be like $500,000. They're really raking it in. And
mm.
took us like 3 months to make them number one for all of their keywords.
Well,
With very competitive keywords, it would take us like 2 years to be able to rank on first page, not even on the first position, but first page. So the landscape is very vast and very different. With the flooring chemicals, you don't have aggregators ranking on the first page of Google. There's no like top 10 chemical flooring companies because there's just a few.
yes.
But with real estate companies, there's like listings everywhere. Like you want to rent in Makati or in Manila, you want to buy in Manila or Makati, different domain names, different websites, all doing pretty much the same thing, and they're competing with each other and they have tons of listings, thousands of listings within each site, and you're going to compete with them and you're a brand new site. It's going to take years. So it would largely depend on the competition.
Okay. What are the sort of the key mistakes that you see companies making that come up quite frequently with SEO?
Number one is to hire the wrong SEO company. That can
Okay.
screw you over
Yeah.
because when you get penalized by Google, it's serious. It's 6 months to a year before you can recover or get re-included. That's what we
Well,
call it.
yeah.
So if you are reliant on your search traffic, 6 months to a year can actually break your business.
Yeah.
Number two would be not being educated enough about how SEO is done, and it's tied up to the first reason as well, which is hiring the wrong SEO company. Because when you have no idea how SEO is done, those gray or black hat SEO companies won't tell you what they're doing, and
Mm,
they're already getting you penalized by Google by the second.
mm,
They're not transparent because they wouldn't be showing you all the unethical stuff that they're doing. And
mm,
if you have no idea how it's done, you're just trusting them, your rankings can tank very quickly. But if you know how it's done, you get the right SEO company, then that's a winning plan for you. The third reason I'd say why SEO campaigns fail is the client is too impatient about results. They want it done on 3 to 6 months. It is not possible when you are running it white hat. Usually it takes a year, 2 years. If you're on a very niche market where you don't got a lot of competition, or it's a very traditional market where people are too proud to invest in their SEO and digital, then you have a winning formula. 3 months, maybe 6 months, you're already dominated the first place, the very first place of Google. That is fantastic. And there are still industries like that here in the Philippines, at least, where we are dominating the keywords. So I'd say those three things are the major factors.
How do you help a company that may be coming out with a new service or product, or is so niche that people aren't aware that that product or service exists?
There has to be the brand awareness that we have to work together with. So the brand awareness campaign would be run on social media, would be run on events, would be run on YouTube, and we have to work together. Because I don't know the phrase they're using, but SEO is definitely not going to work for them because
Mm,
people aren't aware they're existent.
mm,
So they're not going to be searching for that product or service, and they have no idea what they're looking for. SEO is in the interest and consideration phase of the funnel. So that's the second and third. The first one is discovery. If people
mm,
haven't discovered who you are, what you're selling, then they're not really going to search for you. There's no way you can get that search traffic going on for you.
yeah. And so give me an overview of how do you engage with a new client? When you first start, do you come in to do some form of examination diagnostics?
Yeah, so
Is that first step?
usually, yeah, uh, you have to you have to realize that most of my clients come to me because they needed SEO. They keyed in the keyword SEO Philippines, they found me and they needed it. It's never do I do it in a way where they don't need it and I come to them and I sell them SEO. All of my
Mm,
clients are inbound. And that's because it just makes sense for me to do it that way. I'm the only sales guy and I need to, and I'm the CEO as well. So
yeah,
that's, I have to save time.
sure.
So when they come to me, first thing that they ask is, how's my SEO doing? Why aren't we ranking? So I do an audit. I show them, here's where your website is. Here's where the potholes are. If they hired an SEO company before, here's what they did for you. And what are the opportunities that you have? So I show them the potential keywords that they can get and what the search volume is for those keywords. So there are some keywords. So recently I closed a deal with the lubricants and kerosene company distributing kerosene and lubricant products here in the country. They're very big, and they were traditional. They were like, "We're interested. We saw the stats that you showed during your talk,
Mm,
and we want those search terms coming to our website, but we're not sure, Sean, because we've never invested in this. This is the first time. Can we really make ROI? Can we really make money?" And so what I did was show them where their website is, pull the potential keywords for them, really drilled it down. And I said, okay, we're getting like 30,000 search volume potentially per month to your site. How much of those do you think you can close? Let's say from the 30,000 visitors that you get 100 leads, which is not a lot. That means I did a sucky job with your website's user experience and user interface
mm.
and lead generation. From that 100 leads, how many of them do you think you can close? If you close 10, which is a 10% conversion rate, considering they're pre-qualified because they searched for you, how much would that be? And they said it could be anywhere from 1 million to 10 million. And I said, there you go. And what you're paying me is just peanuts compared to that. And
Yes.
so that's how I show them what the ROI can potentially be and close the deal.
And do you work with companies internationally?
Yeah. So right now we have clients from all over the world as well. We have one in Spain. We've had Singapore, New Zealand, Australia, UK, US. So yeah, we do.
Yeah. It's one of the beauties of doing what you do
Yeah,
is
it is.
it just doesn't matter, does it? It,
It
it's
doesn't
like the
matter. Yeah.
conversation now. It doesn't matter that you're in the Philippines, but you could be around the corner. It just
Yeah,
really doesn't make any difference.
for sure.
What's the biggest lesson that you've learned since you've got into business on your own? What's the one thing that you would like to tell everybody listening to this podcast that's really made a difference to you?
I there's a lot. There's a lot. It's hard to pick one.
I know. I love these tough questions. It gets you thinking.
I'm gonna give one and a bonus. So the
Okay.
one thing that I'd give would be humility. You have to have a lot of humility as a CEO and founder or as an executive. Hubris and ego, and this is in the book of Jim Collins, How the Mighty Fall. Hubris or ego is one of the main reasons why companies fail. It's one of the main reasons why companies fade off to irrelevance. So the worst nightmare of a founder is when the company does fail You go bankrupt, you bleed money out, or you slowly die, fade off to irrelevance, like Nokia, for example, where
mm,
it's not even top of mind now when you say smartphones or cell phones.
mm,
But that also means that you're not proud enough. You don't have that much ego for you to say, I'm too big to fail.
mm,
And it's also, the humility also plays a part in the way that you don't go after so many things so fast. You have to be humble to realize this is where I'm good at. This is what God has given me. And this is my calling. And I'm going to be the best at it. So I usually ask questions when I do speaking engagements pre-pandemic on stage, and one of them is, what's the number one toothpaste brand? And you would know, right? What is it there?
Colgate.
Colgate, right? Same here.
Mm.
What's the number two toothpaste brand?
McLean's, maybe.
What's the number one? What's the
Yeah.
number one soft drink brand?
Coke.
Perfect. Same here. What's the number two soft drink brand?
Probably Pepsi.
Probably, yeah. So
Yeah.
those are keywords that I just want to point out, right? People are not sure. Probably, maybe, use
Yeah.
those two words for the second spot, and
Sure. Being number one is important, isn't it?
it
It's
is.
yeah. It's
Yeah.
who was the first man on the moon? We know his
Yeah.
name. Who was second? Who was the
Yeah.
first woman to fly across the channel? It was all those different things. It's people don't remember so much who came second and third. It is
Yeah.
important to become fourth, first.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
and that's difficult. There's a lot of competition for first place. You can't all be first place though.
There is, and a lot of humility goes into getting first place, because you
Yeah.
have to realize that you have to change a lot of things for you to get it. You have to take on sacrifices for you to get it.
It's that
But
actually that sort of being dominant in the first place. It applies, in my role on the M&A side with Boss Equity, is that within a given category, and that these categories are always changing. But if, for instance, we're talking about it from a technology perspective, and a category can be created in many different ways. But if we're looking about a technology sector, then typically, and these are quite interesting stats, the company that is dominant, and there may be 30, 40 companies that are known to be operating in that sector. And all of these companies are being highlighted by Gartner and Forrester and so on. But the company that is number one will typically have 70% of the value of the entire group. That's the difference that it makes. If you think about
yeah,
that, one
it's
company has
huge.
got 70, the rest are sharing the 30% of the value. And
Yeah.
that,
Yeah.
that will vary, but that's where it averages. And if you think of that in all of the different sectors, that's the importance of being number one. If you've got that ambition, you've got to really fight to get there.
Yeah, 100%. And so I that's gonna be the answer to me, for me, humility, because it's also hard for you to be humble and stick with number one, right? I
Sure.
mean, look at Pepsi. They branched out to so many different snacks, so many different other drinks.
Yes.
And right now, they actually are number two, but you weren't sure. A lot of people in my talks are not sure. Number two toothpaste brand here is Close Up, but people would say some different other brands.
Yeah.
The
No,
lesson
I've
there is,
not heard of that in the UK, but maybe it may be
yeah,
there, but I've not
there
heard of
you
it.
go.
Yeah.
Yeah. So when you're not number one, people mistake you for everyone else, and that hurts, right? Because if you really are number two, and people would say, I don't know, then that hurts. So yeah, that's that. I would say have the humility to pursue being number one and doing, humbling yourself down to do whatever it takes with integrity to get that spot. And the bonus advice that I'm going to give everyone is faith also plays a huge part. I know that people might say is, oh, Sean's so religious, but here's the thing. I think that everything has divine appointment. Everything has been appointed ahead of time as well, and you have an appointment. You have a purpose in life. You have a burning why in your heart, and why it's there you don't know. I would say it's because God put it there. You have a purpose. You have a design. You have a reason for living, and to find that out, you have to have faith. You have to ask God, hey, why'd you put me in the SEO field? I mean, that entire story that I shared with you earlier, getting almost kicked out of college,
Mm.
starting that blog, quitting my job. how lucky can a guy get in having a $1 million business now at the age of 33? And $1 million might not sound a lot there in the UK or maybe in the US, but if you're living in a third world country like the
Sure.
Philippines,
Absolutely.
it's pretty darn good. Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah,
It's a
faith plays a huge
it's a
part.
great story, and I think you've come across very well today. I instinctively, I think there'll be a lot of people listening to this that will want to engage with you. So if somebody wants to reach out to you and get hold of you and perhaps get you to come in and do an audit on what they're doing and have a look, what's the best way to reach you?
My name is spelled as Sean, Sean, and then my surname is SI. So this is another funny story. I bought a domain name from Slovenia because it's .si. So I bought Sean.c. That's literally my domain name.
Really?
Yeah. So if you want to get in touch, go to Sean.c. I have my contact form there. You want to book me for a talk or an audit, my calendar is there as well. You can check when I'm free. I'll make it so easy for you guys to get in touch with me, and just hit me up. I'm also on LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook. You can find me pretty much everywhere because that's my business. I have to be in those places, and I'd love to get in touch with you there and help you out. Even if I have to do an audit for you for free, no worries. I could do it for you for free and just pay it forward.
That's brilliant, Sean. Well done today. I enjoyed the conversation. We were interrupted a few times, but you were fine. You were cool about it. I've had people knocking on the door, but we kept it going, and you've done a really good job. I'm going to link with you on LinkedIn because I noticed beforehand that we're not linked. So I'd like to keep in contact with you, and maybe you come back at some stage, and we'll have another conversation. I'd like to see how your business has progressed. So
Sure, of course.
thank you for your time today. I really enjoyed it. So that was the Boss It podcast. Thank you for your time today, and I hope you enjoyed the interview. Thanks very much.